A lot of nationalists think that the way to achieving political power is by posting online. Now, this is something that, I have in the past sort of subscribed to, this idea that, if enough people tweet online, if enough people make YouTube videos, if enough social media influencers become well known, then we can, pressure the government to implement remigration. And whilst online posting does have a purpose, I think it has to be secondary to real world organisation, right? Because most of the country is not on Twitter, right? Because, if you're watching this, you're probably a politically aware nationalist that follows all of these celebrities online, but most of the country doesn't do that. And I think that, when social media influencers grow, by posting anti-immigration content, what they're primarily doing is taking their audience from other social media influencers, as opposed to building up new support, right? I think because a lot of times, people get banned on YouTube, right? And then some other YouTuber will pop up and the audience transfers, but I don't think that many people are actually persuaded to nationalism by online. And I think a lot of people have difficulty coming to this conclusion, because if you consume a lot of online content, then you probably did come to nationalism by posting online or by viewing other people's online posts. So it can be hard to come to the conclusion that, other people won't do the same, right? But it's if you look at the history of nationalism, the most successful parties like the BUF, the National Front, the BNP, they, all organised in the real world. And I know you might say, oh, they didn't have online in that time period. And yeah, that's fair enough, right? But if you look at a party like the Homeland Party, they got absolutely terrible results in the local elections because all of their support was based online, right? And the path to power is through elections, which are real world events. And because we live in a first past the post system with constituencies, the problem with posting online is that the people that you reach are spread out around the country as opposed to being concentrated in a specific area, right? It's like if you have 25% of the electorate that supports you, right, and nationalists are nowhere near 25%, but if they're all perfectly spread around the country, you'll only win a handful of seats. But if that 25% is 50% in half of the constituencies and 0 in all of the other, that's half the seats, right? If you exclude the speaker, that's a majority of seats. So, it shows that why nationalists need to get involved in person instead of just posting online. And I also think that there is, unfortunately, an element of laziness as it relates to this. I think that some people are just, it's more comfortable posting online than it is getting out in person and speaking to people, or even just, having to drive or get the train to attend a political meeting, right? A lot of people criticize political meetings, saying that, you're only listening to stuff that you already know. And I mean, yeah, there is some truth to that, but, consuming online content is the same, right? There's no difference between a person that knows nothing about politics but votes for a nationalist party and someone that has consumed all of the online content and still just votes for a nationalist party, right? In terms of their effect on the country and its government, it's identical, right? Because consuming online content doesn't recruit people, and if you post online, because of algorithms, you're only really posting to people that already agree with you. Now, I do think that whilst I've criticised online content, it's not completely irrelevant. There are some strengths to it. I think that a key strength is arguing with nationalists on the best strategy to take or which party would be the best, because you're not arguing with people that disagree with you politically, because there's just no point in doing that, right? No one's going to change their mind because you know, Anglo England 88 said so on Twitter, right? But people might change their mind if nationalists, the people that are already nationalists, could change their mind if they're arguing with someone that already agrees with them politically. Because the difference between debating someone with different political views versus debating someone with the same political views is that when you're debating someone with different opinions, it's a competition, right? You're trying to come up with the best way of winning over the audience, right, by asserting yourself over the person you're debating. But when you're debating someone with the same political views, or you're debating strategy, it's not about that. You genuinely are just trying to work out. It's more of a discussion as to what is the best idea instead of a competition. So I think that, you know, online, it's not entirely useless. And I think that online can have a role in, you know, political parties showing what they're doing in the real world to try and get online people to get involved in the real world. I think that can be useful. It's also worth talking about what people can do in the real world, you know, as opposed to doing online. I think that, you know, you could get involved. I think the first thing to do is to join a political party, right? Because, you know, you can't, yeah, there might not be a perfect party, but, you know, we can't have perfect be the enemy of the good. And there's just so many nationalist parties out there that there must be at least one that you think is better than all of the others, right? You know, there's the National Rebirth Party, British Democrats, National Housing Party, Homeland Party, you know, even Restore Britain, although, you know, it's kind of debatable if they count as nationalist. You know, whichever one it is, just join them, because you can't moan about the state of parties if you're not trying to come up with something better. And in terms of what you can do, you can set up street stalls in town centres, you can canvass, you can attend meetings, you can attend community events, you know, lots of things you can do. I think that when people say that there's nothing to do in the real world, it's more of an excuse than it is them actually not being able to come up with anything. And, you know, this doesn't mean that you have to dedicate your entire life to, you know, political activism. It can just be something that you do part-time when you're available to do so. Although, you know, I think a lot of people sort of gaslight themselves into believing that they don't have any free time to do activism, when I think they do. I mean, you know, I haven't done loads for the National Rebirth Party, which I'm a member of. I've, you know, helped with a street stall, attended a couple meetings, and, you know, there's other people that have done more than me, but you can't criticise what I'm doing or what other people are doing if you're not doing anything yourself. Anyway, that's it from me. If you enjoyed this video, then you can leave a like and subscribe. It's, you know, it's not really going to do a whole lot for nationalism, but it might persuade some online people to get involved in the real world, and it might, you know, it helps me out. So yeah, thanks, bye.